For most of us, thankfully, the experience of being handcuffed and put into the back of a police cruiser is totally alien. That's only for criminals, right? Well, tonight, right after this program, a new TVO original documentary entitled The Arrest examines how it happens that people are wrongly taken into custody by police and the hardship it can bring them. It's the latest from filmmaker and director Martin Himel, and he joins us now from Tel Aviv, Israel. Martin, so good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing? Are you holding up okay with everything that's going on?
Sure. Hosting a television program out of my attic, we do it all the time. Nothing to it.
Yes, I know.
I want to play a little trailer from your documentary, and then we'll come back and chat. But this will at least give those who haven't seen it yet the flavor of what we're about to talk about. So, Tony, if you would, let's run it.
And I see like a line of cops kind of to the left, and then I turn around and all I hear is him, him, him.
The trauma of an arrest can be overwhelming.
And I will never forget this.
You're hurting me!
I hope you know you brought this on yourself.
There is not a single use of force by a police officer that looks pretty.
But what if it was a wrongful arrest?
The problem is that this happens quite often, where people are innocent.
You are presumed guilty until proven innocent.
Follow Toronto lawyer Davin Charney as he fights for the wrongfully charged.
I always tell my clients when they're charged with a criminal offense, win or lose, you always lose.
The Arrest, a TVO original.
Martin, why did you want to make this documentary?
Well, there are several reasons. First of all, as a young boy, I grew up with a father that was sort of like what you call a general practitioner for the legal profession. And we had every several days somebody calling, the police calling, they wanted to arrest someone, and he was negotiating with them, trying to keep this person out of the arrest. And he used to teach us lessons. He says, look, arrests can happen to anyone. And if you were ever confronted by a policeman, always remember a few things. First of all, just answer very basic questions, your name, where you are, etc. Never ask questions. And if they say you're under arrest, shut your mouth and never open it again. Actually, I came across these type of things personally with a much more difficult police force, the Serbian police force. When I was there, when Canada and America were fighting NATO forces, fighting Serbian Milosevic forces, and being a Canadian journalist, even though I was invited, I was branded a spy and confronted by Serb military who are not like the Canadian military. And I remembered those rules, just answered the questions, yes or no, sir, and I managed to get out of it, though some of my colleagues spent a week in jail at that time. So my dad's advice was good. And then there was another reason why. And that is later on, I came across the John Howard Society's report that said that 44 of every 100 people arrested in Ontario eventually have the charges dropped, and they're basically innocent, but they live with tremendous scars from the experience that basically the arrest is the real punishment and not getting convicted of a crime.
I suspect the people who know you as a foreign correspondent. You've just talked about your coverage in the Balkans. You've covered terrible violence in the Middle East for many years. But this is an Ontario story that you're telling. You wanted to come home, I guess, to do this. How come?
Well, I actually do quite a few documentaries in Canada. This is not the only one. Since being a foreign correspondent, I've basically gone into doing documentaries all over the world, and I do quite a few in Canada too. And because Canada is my home as well. And I stumbled on this one in my previous experience, and I felt that there's a real story to be told about those 44 out of 100 people who get arrested and suffer greatly for it.
Well, one of the heroes in your documentary is a guy named Davin Charney, who is a lawyer who represents the people that you are chronicling in this documentary. What's his story?
Davin Charney is an idealist. He's not a lawyer pursuing the big bucks. Big bucks lawyers will never go try to help people who want to get compensation for the police for wrongful arrest. And that's what he specializes in. Why does he do that? Well, when Davin was a graduate student, he was also a social activist trying to help youth that were homeless. And in the process, he got arrested on a charge that he did not do. Even though he got arrested and he was never convicted of anything, he lost his Ontario government job. It so incensed him that he went to law school to basically defend the wrongfully arrested. So after discovering Davin, I thought he'd be an excellent prime character, a protagonist, to try to help the wrongfully arrested.
Well, you can tell he's still infuriated at the fact that he's spent 2 weeks in jail for something he never did, and the charges were ultimately dropped. That really seems to fuel him in the course of his career, yes?
Yes, it does, because arrest is a traumatic experience for people who are law-abiding citizens. A law-abiding citizen never expects to find himself in prison. A law-abiding citizen never expects to have a confrontation with the police. In Davin's case, he was also roughed up in prison because they put him in a maximum security prison, Maplehurst Penitentiary. And so he got roughed up, he got charged. It took him 10 days to get bail, and he lost his job for something he never did.
Martin, is that what he's referring to when he says, as Davin did in your documentary, I always tell my clients that when they're charged with a criminal offense, win or lose, you always lose?
That's exactly the point of the documentary. So 44 out of 100 Ontario citizens, when they get arrested, they have to deal with the bail, they have to deal with getting out of prison, they have to deal with social stigma of basically being felt like they are guilty until proven innocent. They then have to deal with the trauma of being in prison for a while, and then they have to deal with the lawyers and crowns who press on them, and all that takes months, and then finally the charges are dropped. That's for 44 out of 100 Ontario citizens. So the case is closed as far as the crowns are concerned, but that's just the beginning for them. It leaves a trauma, it leaves a scar, it leaves impaired relationships, and they have to pick up the bag with it. So the arrests are a real punishment.
Martin, I want to set up this next question by saying that I did cover the G20 protests in Toronto 10 years ago. In fact, I was asked to testify on Parliament Hill and at a police misconduct hearing. I have to say, many of the police officers that I saw while reporting on that story behaved disgracefully, kettling peaceful protesters, beating up peaceful protesters. It was awful stuff, just terrible. Having said that, there is a moment in your documentary where one of the subjects, whose charges eventually got tossed, is sitting on top of a police car in the middle of a demonstration while that police car is being vandalized by somebody else. Now, would you grant that that's being a bit stupidly provocative?
Yes, and actually I have that in the documentary. The person says he was stupid. And I deliberately put in the documentary that it doesn't just come out of the blue all the time. He says, and I believe him, and it's clear the Crowns believed him eventually, that he was trying to prevent other provocateurs from actually destroying the car. He said, look, if you destroy this car, it's all on camera, you're going to get convicted. And so that was the whole point behind the whole thing. And he himself says, yes, I should never have sat on the car. So my goal here is not to go after the police, it's to show there's flaws in the system. And he did go one step too far, but he did get the charges rescinded, but he suffered horribly for it. He lost many friendships and still tries to cope with it.
At his instigation, though, he's the guy who told his friends, I'm done with you because none of you stuck by me, right?
That's right. It's very common when people get arrested that your friends come up to you and say, you must have done something. It just doesn't happen out of the blue. These charges, these accusations come, you must have done something. And that sticks. And then only after months go by and the charges are dropped, and it's never a headline when the charges are dropped in your personal life, they said, oh, okay. But you went through all those months where people ignored you, stayed away from you, and basically looked at you with a lot of suspicion. So yeah, he dropped his friends, and then he went away for 2 years to basically find himself and find out what he wants to do with his life. He went off and traveled.
In some respects, do you think it's an indication of how much faith, now maybe it's blind faith, but how much faith that we have in our Crown attorneys, in our police forces, in our justice system, that we assume that if you got charged, you must have done something to deserve it?
That is precisely the problem. It's not that the Crowns are evil and are going after you. It's not that the police are evil and going after you. They're trying to protect us, and so are the Crowns. It's the system has some inherent flaws on it. Because in Ontario, police arrest and charge, but they're not lawyers, and they're expected to charge, and they don't know exactly if it's the right move or not their move, so they add extra charges. They say the Crown will deal with it. Now, if the Crown was to deal with it 2-3 days later or 1 day later and say, oh, this is a ridiculous charge or that's a good charge or whatever, it would solve a lot of problems. But that's not what happens in Ontario. There are so many arrests. There's such a backlog before the Crowns get it. So whoever's arrested goes through pure hell until the Crowns get it many months later. And meanwhile, you've suffered terribly, and then the Crowns have to deal with it. And so it's the system that's the real problem here.
Martin, as you investigated this story, does it go without saying that racial minorities face a disproportionate part of the problem here?
Absolutely. Two of the people I've focused on were basically violently arrested for what we call driving while black, meaning that somebody committed a crime in their area, in the wider area. They're black. They happen to be moving around where they are. Usually, the best way to get somebody to identify themselves and force them to do something is to try to stop them while they're driving, because then the police have the full right to ask for your driver's license. They don't have the full right to have you identify yourself if you're not in the car, and that leads to all sorts of problems. So if this constantly happens to you, you get a bit testy with the police, and it does happen quite a bit. And in our cases, you'll see very graphically that they suffer quite a bit for it. And then you're pegged whether you committed a crime or not. If you're a black single mother, we have a woman who's a black single mother with many children. Oh, she must have all sorts of problems. You get pegged and you suffer for it from the image. So minorities do suffer. Native peoples make a complete disproportionate number of arrests and suffer greatly from the problem.
How difficult or easy is it, once you've beat the rap, as it were, and the charges have been dropped, to have all of that expunged from your record, expunged from the internet? In other words, how much does this all hang around you even well after it's all over and done with?
There's been real improvement in Ontario with the establishment of the Police Records Act, which came in about 1.5 to 2 years ago, which basically, when an employer came and wants to do a records check on you to see you've been convicted of something, before he'd find out if you've been convicted or not convicted, but he also found out if you've been arrested and not convicted. And for an employer, being arrested and not convicted is like being convicted. He doesn't want to have a mess. He doesn't want to go through with this. So many, many people who were arrested and never convicted of anything and had the charges dropped were having a terrible time getting jobs. So the Police Records Act basically made sure that the police would not divulge that you've been arrested and not convicted of a charge. They would only answer basically if you've been convicted of a charge or not. The big problem is that the police cannot control our world today as far as information. Social media is much bigger. So today you can have a Google record, and we talk about that in the documentary, where people were involved in this case, it was a botched SWAT raid at a house that they thought was a drug gang. It turned out to be a family, a single woman who's black, of course, and 6 children, and they were arrested. They were investigated. The place was stripped down. The press covered all of it. They disappeared, and now that was many years ago. And to this day, these people have a Google record, and they can't rent apartments easy. They can't get jobs easy. They can't do anything easy, because if you click their name, what comes up? That a SWAT team went into their house, and that the police said they had enough suspicion to do it. So it's a big problem. Now, what's interesting about Google records is that if you live outside of Canada or the States, like in Europe, you have the right to be forgotten. You can demand, and the courts uphold it. The courts uphold it, that you can be forgotten, and that can be taken out. But for some reason or other, in the United States and Canada, you do not have a right to be forgotten, and you have to live with that forever at this stage.
Is that a legislative change you think we need to make here in Canada?
Absolutely. Not just in Canada, also in the United States, around the world. I mean, if Google was held accountable like you or I or a press entity, many things they have there will go out, because anything goes on Google. There's no slander laws. There's no quality control of really what's being said. Yes, some hate speech is mentioned, but you can say virtually anything about anybody there, and Google just says we're not responsible. So I think the courts in the United States and Canada should definitely have create laws. There should be laws of the right to be forgotten.
The problem that you have identified here in the province of Ontario, do you know if it's as bad in every other province in the country as well?
Well, actually, Quebec and in British Columbia, there are different systems, and this is very important. In Quebec and in British Columbia, if you get arrested, the police can't arrest and permanently charge. They can arrest and make charges, but the Crowns come in very quickly. Within a couple of days, they come very quickly to take a quick look and to go look at the case, and either to throw it out right away because they say it's not going to stick, or to pursue it. So the difference is in the statistics. In Ontario, as I mentioned, 44 out of 100 Ontario residents who get arrested will go through months of agony and get their charges dropped. In BC and Quebec, according to those statistics at the time from the John Howard Society, only 9% face that situation. In other words, there's a much higher reason to take somebody to court because they've looked into it, and then only afterwards there might be an exception, and 9% have the charges dropped before trial or before some sort of conclusion.
Now, usually when people make documentaries, it's because they want to change the world. So how do you want to change the world by having made this?
If somehow I had a magic wand and I could get the crowns in Ontario and the police departments in Ontario to get together and say, look, guys, they're all on the same side. We're all on the same side. We want justice done. We want people who deserve to get arrested to get arrested. We want people who deserve to face trial to face trial. Can we not cooperate a little more so that we could work together to get through at least the initial search of an arrest and spare those poor people who have to go through months of agony and trauma and changing their lives, and have those cases withdrawn as soon as possible? It would make the situation so much better for many people in Ontario, people who are law-abiding, who respect the law, and just fell into this trap, this system trap that really ruins their lives. So I wish I could get the two sides together, over a couple of beers, and let's change this.
In our last 30 seconds here, I've always wanted to ask you this, because you have gone to some pretty dangerous places in this world to do what you do.
Yes.
You infiltrated ISIS at one point, I believe. How the heck did you do that?
Well, basically, I was in Iraq, and I was on the front line with the Kurdish troops, and I could see the ISIS soldiers on the other side. And I said to myself, gosh, I would love to interview them, but if I do that, I'm probably going to lose my head. So obviously, I didn't make any effort to go there. And then I said, I really want to somehow show what ISIS does in their recruitment because they were so effective in it. So what we did is that I have contacts with people who were in former secret services, who are expert psychologists. So we created two people who are fake people with excellent backgrounds, and we tried to lure ISIS to try to recruit them. And the chances of doing that are very rare. ISIS was very sophisticated, very careful. We filled the computers with information so they could check on them. And basically, they fell for it, and they tried to recruit our two guys. One of them actually went crazy for a woman we created who was supposed to be an Australian, and we arranged a meeting point, a place to go to on the border. We arranged in Turkey. We arranged contacts that would take her across. Of course, they never showed up, but we got one incredible documentary out of it.
Remind me never to try to deceive you. I want to thank you so much for talking to us tonight here on TVO. And I watched the documentary last night, and I got to tell you, it's great. The first few minutes in particular, while you are recounting that violence of the G20 from 10 years ago, that is absolutely horrifying, those pictures. So good job, a job well done. And I hope lots of people watch this documentary. Good to see you again, Martin.
I hope so too. Thank you very much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.